The moment my sister leaned across the Christmas dinner table, wineglass in hand, her smile sharp enough to cut the light strung across the room, I felt something inside me splinter. "Go ahead," Madison said loud enough for the entire Holt family to hear. "If you're so brave, just leave. You wouldn't last a week without us." Her voice floated above the clatter of forks, above the polite laughter of guests, above the carols humming through the speakers. And everyone watched me waiting, amused, expecting me to shrink the way I always had. Instead, I reached for the keys lying next to my plate. The house keys, the car keys, the keys they thought were theirs. I laid them quietly on the linen cloth, and the click was so soft I almost didn't hear it. But Madison did. Her smile froze. My parents stiffened. And as snow fell softly outside, I stood without saying a word, walked past the tree glowing red and gold, and stepped into the cold night. Behind me, their laughter collapsed into stunned silence. By sunrise, the silence would turn into panic. I didn't put on my coat. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take a single thing except my phone and the little envelope my mother had slipped into my hand 2 days before she died. "Not yet," she had whispered. "You'll know when to open it." I never understood why she chose those words or why she looked so serious when she said them. But I thought of them now as I stepped off the porch and let the snow swallow the sound of my footsteps. The house behind me glowed with Christmas lights, warm and curated and perfect, just the way my family liked things to appear. Inside, I knew my father Richard was already frowning the way he always did when I didn't behave the way he had scripted in his mind. My mother Claudia would pretend her wine wasn't shaking. And Madison had wanted a scene. She had wanted triumph. She had wanted to see me fold. She didn't get that satisfaction. The air burned my cheeks as I walked down the driveway, but the cold felt cleaner than anything inside that house. My breath turned white in the night air, rising and disappearing like ghosts. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't need to. I just needed to get away before the part of me still trained to obey them tried to sit back down. It was strange walking away from the place I had grown up in, a place where I had been treated as useful, but never valued. A place where I paid bills I never saw, signed documents I never read, and held responsibilities that weren't mine, but were handed to me because I was the dependable one. Dependable was just another word for controllable. I knew that now. I reached the end of the street before I realized my hands were shaking, not from fear, from relief. Cars passed slowly, their headlights cutting through the snow. Families inside laughed together, their silhouettes warm and whole, in another life that could have been us. But the Holt family had never been whole. We were something else, a performance held together by image, reputation, and the belief that we were above the rules that applied to everyone else. But even performances crack. I walked for almost an hour before I stopped at the small park near downtown. The swings were empty. The snow on the benches was untouched. I sat anyway, brushing off a thin layer of frost. My legs tingled from the cold, but I didn't move. I wasn't ready to go anywhere, and I wasn't ready to think about what came next. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. I didn't look at it. Somewhere around midnight, I pulled my knees to my chest and watched the snow fall in slow spirals. The quiet was comforting, thick and gentle. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without measuring the room first. I thought about my mother. Evelyn Walsh Holt had been the calm center of our storm, gentle, soft-spoken, intelligent in a way she never flaunted. She had always seemed to stand half a step behind our father, smiling at his stories, supporting his decisions. But if you watched closely, if you paid attention, and I always did, you noticed her eyes. They were sharp, knowing, always assessing the things nobody said aloud. Her death a year ago had left a hole in the family, but not the hole my father liked to dramatize. For him, it wasn't grief, it was inconvenience. My mother had run the quiet machinery of the Holt household finances, paperwork, property maintenance schedules. When she died, all those systems fell to me. Not because I volunteered. Because Madison refused, my father wouldn't, and my mother, before she passed, whispered to me, "Everything is already arranged. You just need to hold it together until the time is right." I assumed she meant emotionally. I was wrong. My phone buzzed again, and again. I finally turned it face up. 18 missed calls from my father, 14 from my mother, 34 from Madison. A tight, humorless laugh escaped my chest. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about control. The last call had come in 5 minutes ago. A voicemail. I put the phone back in my pocket without listening. They would be shouting, demanding, accusing, or worse, pleading. My family only used affection as a tool, never a truth. I stood brushing snow from my jeans. My fingers were numb, my hair damp with frost. I didn't know where I would sleep that night. A hotel, maybe. My car was still in the Holt driveway, and calling an Uber meant dealing with my father if he saw me retrieve it. I wasn't ready for that confrontation. The park stretched into a small wooded trail. I walked toward it, needing distance, needing any space that didn't smell like cedar-scented candles and expectations. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment it felt like my mother was walking beside me. She had always loved winter, the quiet of it, the stillness. She said snow made the world honest. Nothing could hide under that clean white hush. I didn't know then how much truth the snow would reveal. By the time I reached the main street, my phone buzzed again, not with a call this time, but with a notification. A text from an unknown number. I'm awake if you need somewhere to go. LG. I stared at the initials. LG Linda Graves, my mother's lawyer. I hadn't spoken to her since the will reading where she had seemed oddly expectant, as though she was waiting for something. She had shaken my hand too warmly, looked into my eyes too long, and said, "Your mother trusted you more than anyone." At the time, the words had felt comforting but vague. Now they felt like something else. I texted back, "I'm okay, just needed space." Her reply came in seconds. "I know, but you should come by tomorrow. There are things you need to see." A cold shiver traced my spine, things I needed to see. I felt suddenly dangerously awake. The envelope in my coat seemed to heat against my palm as though urging me to open it right there. But the park was empty, and the street was dark, and something told me this wasn't the right moment. Not yet. My mother had always understood timing. I walked back toward downtown, passing closed shops and glowing windows. Snowflakes caught in my eyelashes. At the corner, an old brick cafe still had its lights on. I slipped inside, grateful for the warmth. The barista didn't question why a woman without a coat walked in at 1 a.m. with snow in her hair. She just handed me a steaming mug of peppermint tea and said, "Rough night," I nodded, and she didn't pry. I sat near the window watching the snow thicken outside. The tea warmed my throat. My heartbeat steadied. Then, at 1:17 a.m., my phone vibrated again. Not a call, a message from Madison. "You think you're hurting us? You're pathetic. Come home before you embarrass yourself." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I turned off my phone. Outside, the Christmas lights along the street flickered gently. People always talked about holiday magic, how December softened the world, brought families closer, healed old wounds. Magic had never touched the Holt family. But something else was coming. A reckoning. I finished my tea, wiped my hands on my jeans, and stepped outside again. The cold didn't sting as much. My legs didn't feel as heavy. I didn't know where I was going. But for the first time in my life, I knew where I wasn't going. Home. Not that home. Not ever again. The snow whispered as it fell, soft and unburdened. I lifted my face toward it, letting it melt against my skin. In that quiet moment, surrounded by a town wrapped in Christmas lights, I felt something unfamiliar bloom inside my chest. Freedom. My mother had prepared me for this. I didn't know how or why, but I would soon. Tomorrow I would go to Linda Graves's office. Tomorrow I would open the envelope. Tomorrow I would learn why my sister was wrong. I didn't need them. They needed me. And by the time the sun rose again on this small winter town, their perfect little empire built on image and ego, and my unquestioning obedience would already be beginning to crack. Tomorrow, everything would change. I woke to the hollow quiet of a hotel room I hadn't planned to sleep in. The curtains were thin, letting the pale winter sun bleed across the carpet in long, cold stripes. I lay still for a moment, letting the clarity of last night settle in. The air smelled faintly of old heating vents and peppermint tea. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, the battery nearly dead from a night of unanswered calls. For the first time in my adult life, the silence did not feel oppressive. It felt earned. I sat up slowly, muscles aching from sleeping in jeans, and rubbed my hands over my face. The memories of the night before rose one by one. Madison's smirk, my father's tightening jaw, the keys on the table, the snow swallowing my footsteps, the wave of missed calls. I wasn't fragile. I wasn't impulsive. I simply reached the end of a line they'd spent years drawing around me. The clock read 8:32 in the morning when I finally picked up my phone. It buzzed instantly in my hand, vibrating like something alive. I turned it over. 46 missed calls, 11 text messages, 3 voicemails, 1 group chat exploding with activity, and a new message from my father time-stamped 6:14 a.m. Come home. Now. We need to talk. No greeting, no concern, just the urgency of a man who'd realized something wasn't working in his favor. Another message followed minutes later. Where are you? We need access to the utilities. The bank account link isn't working. I closed my eyes. Of course that would be the first thing to unravel. My father managed the household the way he managed everything else in life, by pretending to be in control, while forcing someone else to do the actual work. And for the past 2 years, I had been the one responsible for paying property taxes, renewing insurance policies, adjusting investments, and transferring funds. Policies my mother had originally handled then quietly passed on to me before she died. My father never bothered to learn any of it. Because why would he when I existed? But systems built on assumptions fall apart fast. I turned the phone over again, silencing another incoming call, and got up. The water from the shower sputtered at first, then smoothed into a steady stream. I stood under it longer than necessary, letting the warmth anchor me. By the time I checked out of the hotel, the snow had stopped. The air felt crisp, the kind of cold that sharpens your senses. I walked toward Main Street with my hood pulled up, passing bakery windows fogged from ovens and a bookstore with a handwritten sign advertising holiday sales. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. Or rather, Claudia Holt, the woman who gave birth to me but never quite managed to mother me. Meredith. This is ridiculous. Your father can't access the mortgage portal. Call back immediately. Then a second message. And your sister is hysterical. Whatever point you think you're making, drop it. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. My mother always had a talent for minimizing everything she didn't understand. Or perhaps didn't want to understand. It was easier for her to pretend my leaving was an inconvenient tantrum than a years-long accumulation of quiet injuries. I kept walking. Linda's office sat at the edge of the historic district, a 2-story brick building with ivy clinging stubbornly to its walls even in winter. A wreath hung on the door, simple, elegant, made of pine and dried oranges, the kind my mother would have loved. My heart tightened unexpectedly. I stepped inside, brushing snow from my boots. The receptionist looked up from her computer, recognition sparking in her eyes. Meredith, Ms. Graves is expecting you. Go right in. Expecting me, not just accommodating me, expecting. I walked down the short hallway, my pulse quickening with every step. The door to Linda's office was slightly ajar. I tapped once before entering. She stood by the window, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, her silver hair neatly pinned back. She turned when she heard me. You came, she said warmly. Good. Sit. I did. For a few seconds she simply studied me the way my mother used to, attentive, perceptive, quietly evaluating what I wasn't saying out loud. Then she nodded to my coat pocket. You brought the envelope. I swallowed and pulled it out. The cream paper looked softer in daylight, the script written in my mother's looping hand. Linda exhaled slowly. Before you open that, you need context. Things your mother arranged. Things she asked me to handle when the time came. I leaned forward slightly, my palms cold. "Linda, what is this about?" She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick file secured with a black ribbon. "When Evelyn came to me 5 years ago, it wasn't for estate planning alone," she said. "It was for protection. Your protection specifically." My breath caught. Protection. "Your mother was a brilliant woman," Linda continued, "and she understood patterns better than anyone gave her credit for. She saw the way the family leaned on you, the way they dismissed your contributions while exploiting your reliability. She feared it would escalate after her death." My chest tightened painfully. "So she made changes. Large ones." Linda set the file on the table and untied the ribbon. "Meredith, everything your family thinks they own, they don't." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She opened the file. Property deeds, account documents, corporate records, pages and pages, each bearing a name printed clearly at the top. My name. All of it. My throat went dry. "Linda, this can't be right." "It is. Your mother transferred ownership gradually, intentionally, and legally. The house, the secondary property in Birch Hollow, the holiday cabin on Glacier Road, the investment accounts, the family trust. All of it held under your name with protective clauses preventing anyone else from accessing or transferring assets without your explicit consent." I blinked, the words floating around me like something unreal. "She never told me," I whispered. "She couldn't," Linda said gently. "Your mother understood your family dynamic. If she'd revealed her plans too soon, someone would have found a way to sabotage them. She needed you to stay unaware until I walked out." Linda nodded. She knew there would be a breaking point. "All she asked was that when it came, I step in." I sat back slowly, my pulse thundering in my ears. The Holt family empire, the one they paraded around town, the one they flaunted at charity events, the one they used to measure worth, had never belonged to them. Not really, it belonged to me. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. "And now," Linda said, sliding a smaller envelope across the table, "you can open your mother's letter." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. The scent of lavender, faint but familiar, rose from the paper. I unfolded it and saw my mother's handwriting, graceful as ever. "My dearest Meredith, if you're reading this, then you've finally done the thing I always prayed you would do. Walk away. You deserved better long before today." I stopped, swallowing hard. Evelyn's voice came alive in every curve of ink. Her tone gentle, steady, patient, the voice of someone who had waited a long time for me to see myself clearly. "I know Madison resents your gentleness," the letter continued. "I know your father uses your reliability to excuse his failures. And I know your mother, yes, even me, expected too much from you for too long. But you are stronger than all of us." My breath hitched. I read on. "There are truths you don't yet know. Truths I entrusted to Linda. She will show you everything. She will help you protect what is yours. And when the time comes, when the veil finally lifts, and the family realizes what they've lost, you must not let guilt pull you back. Even love has limits." Tears blurred the ink. Linda waited quietly while I wiped them away. When I finished the letter, my hands shook. I pressed it to my chest, breathing slowly. "Take your time," Linda murmured. It took several minutes before I trusted myself to look up. "So what now?" I whispered. "What happens next?" "That depends on what they do," she replied. "Your family is currently locked out of the financial systems. They can't access the house accounts or loans. They'll panic. They'll scramble. They'll likely blame you." A humorless laugh escaped me. "That's predictable. Eventually, they'll realize the truth. And when they do, they'll come to you, not out of love, but out of dependency." I folded the letter carefully. "And I'm supposed to let them fall apart." "You're supposed to let consequences happen," Linda said calmly. "Your mother didn't build a legal fortress, so you could continue holding up people who refuse to stand on their own." The words struck deep. A knock sounded on the office door, interrupting us. The receptionist peeked in. "Ms. Graves." Sorry to interrupt, but Meredith's father is on line 1. He said it's urgent. My blood went cold. Don't answer, Linda said softly. Not yet. I nodded. The receptionist withdrew, closing the door quietly. Let me guess, I murmured. They discovered something new this morning. Linda opened another document and slid it toward me. They discovered the house deed. My stomach dropped. Good, she added. It accelerates the timeline. Now we wait. They will reveal their intentions soon enough. I straightened in my chair, gripping the edges of the letter. For the first time since my mother's funeral, I felt anchored. Not lost, not unsure. Anchored. Linda leaned back, studying me thoughtfully. You know, she said, your mother used to tell me that your quietness wasn't weakness. It was clarity. You saw more than people realized. I exhaled slowly. Maybe I whispered, but I don't think they've ever really seen me. Then they're about to, Linda said. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Madison. You need to fix this. Now. I didn't reply. Something in me shifted, small but seismic. The Holt family had spent years believing I couldn't survive without them. But in the span of one night, the truth had flipped. They needed me, and the collapse had just begun. When I stepped out of Linda's office, the winter air felt different. Not lighter or warmer, but honest. Sharp, real. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked toward the street, the envelope tucked safely inside my coat. Behind me, the sun glinted off the brass plaque beside the office door. Linda Graves, attorney at law, elder law, estate protection. My mother had chosen her carefully. I paused at the sidewalk, took a long breath, and whispered into the cold air, "Okay, Mom, I'm ready." The wind brushed against my cheek as if in answer. By the time I reached the cafe near Main Street, my phone had buzzed so many times I stopped feeling the vibration altogether. I slipped into a booth near the window, ordered nothing, and wrapped my hands around the lukewarm ceramic mug someone had left behind. Outside, the snow was beginning to melt into slush, and the holiday lights blinked in uneven rhythms, making the whole town look like a movie set losing power. I finally turned my phone face up. 6 new voicemails, dozens of texts. The family group chat Holt clan scrolling endlessly with messages from my mother, my father, and Madison demanding attention. The last unread message caught my eye. Mom Meredith, call me now. We cannot pay the property tax bill. Property tax, I blinked slowly. I had paid it 2 weeks ago. Then I read her next message. The online system says we're not authorized on the account. Fix it. A small cold satisfaction spread through me. My mother didn't know that authorization had never belonged to her in the first place. I had been the sole signer since the year before she passed, and the system wasn't broken. It was simply functioning as intended, for the first time. I scrolled further. Dad, do not play games with us. We need access to utilities. Mom, Meredith, your sister is in tears. Be reasonable. Madison, this is childish. Come home. You're embarrassing yourself. Then, a minute later, Madison. And by the way, the bank called. There's an issue with the main account. They say the primary owner needs to contact them. That's you. Fix it now. My fingers tightened around the mug. Their panic was beginning. I put my phone down, leaned back in the booth, and exhaled slowly. My mother had shielded me in ways I never understood until now. She had built a legal fortress and placed me quietly at its center, knowing that one day the family would try to pull me apart. She hadn't protected them from consequences, and neither would I. The cafe door chimed. I didn't look up, but a familiar voice broke into the quiet. There you are. I froze. Madison slid into the seat across from me, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her hair in a sleek ponytail. She looked like she had run the whole way here, which was ridiculous. Madison didn't run. She didn't hurry. People hurried for her. We need to talk, she said, breathless. No, I said calmly. You need to talk. I don't owe you anything. Her eyes narrowed. What is wrong with you? I didn't respond. I simply waited. Madison leaned forward, nails tapping on the table. Everything is falling apart at home. The accounts won't load. Dad can't pay the contractors. Mom can't access the mortgage. And the bank won't talk to us without you." "That sounds difficult," I said softly. She stared at me. "Are you kidding? This isn't funny. We're dealing with a crisis." I tilted my head slightly. "What crisis?" "You know what crisis." Madison's voice cracked, her composure slipping. "The house mirror. The house. The bank said the primary deed holder has to update the verification manually. And when Dad checked the name on the official record she stopped." I let the silence press on her heavy and unrelenting. Finally she whispered it. "Yours." Her face twisted with disbelief. "How is that possible?" "How did you get the house?" "I didn't get it," I said. "Mom gave it to me." Madison's jaw fell slack. "That's impossible." I asked her 3 different times if she'd updated the deed after I moved out, and she said, "She told you whatever she had to," I said quietly. "And she told me what mattered." Madison was shaking her head. No, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't choose you over the whole family. She didn't choose anyone I said. She protected me." The words landed like a slap. Madison's eyes filled with something sharp and dangerous. "This is unbelievable. You walk out like a dramatic martyr and suddenly you're lording your magical inheritance over everyone." I stared at her, feeling the smallest flicker of grief. "She really didn't see it, not then, not ever. I didn't take anything from you," I said. "I'm just not carrying you anymore." She shot to her feet, palms slamming onto the table. A few people looked over, startled. Madison lowered her voice, but not her fury. "You listen to me, Meredith. Our parents are freaking out. Contractors are calling. Dad's business account is frozen. The utilities are flagged pending authorization. None of this makes sense. And now the house. How is the house yours? How did Mom?" She cut herself off, eyes widening. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mom planned this. I didn't confirm it. I didn't need to." Madison sank back into her seat, stunned. Then slowly her expression hardened into something brittle and cruel, the look she'd worn many times growing up right before she took something from me just because she could. "Fine," she said. "Play this game. But you will come home today. You will fix everything. And then we are going to straighten out whatever ridiculous legal glitch put your name on the deed." "No," I said. She blinked. No, I repeated. "I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing anything. And nothing is a glitch. The estate is mine. Legally, fully, permanently." Madison laughed a sharp, humorless sound. "Dad will never allow that." "It's not his decision." Her face twisted. "Mom was always too sentimental. She didn't understand what this family needed. Dad and we kept everything functioning. Not you." "Is that what you told yourself?" I asked softly. "That's what's true," she snapped. I slipped my coat on, stood, and placed a few bills on the table for the untouched tea. "Good luck, Madison. You can't walk away from this. I already did." I stepped past her, leaving the cafe before she could form her next threat. Outside, the sun had risen fully, casting pale gold across the icy streets. I pulled my hood up and walked, feeling the crisp air sting my cheeks. Behind me, Madison burst out of the cafe, shouting my name. People turned. She hated unwanted attention. It meant she wasn't in control of the narrative. Good. I kept walking. She didn't follow far. Madison always stopped when the chase wasn't easy. As I reached the corner, my phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID made me pause. Birch Creek County Tax Office. I let it ring twice before answering. "This is Meredith," I said. A polite voice responded. "Ms. Holt, we're calling to confirm authorization for the tax exemption update on your Birch Hollow property." "My Birch Hollow property," I repeated. "Yes, ma'am," the clerk said. "It appears your family attempted to access several accounts under your name this morning. Since you're the sole owner, we need confirmation directly from you." My pulse steadied. "Sole owner," I said. "Right." "Yes, ma'am. Would you like to authorize the exemption update?" I looked down the street at the snow melting under the weak winter sun. "Yes," I said. "Go ahead." I ended the call and kept walking until I reached the small wooden bridge that crossed the half-frozen creek. I leaned on the railing, letting the cold seep through my gloves. So this was what agency felt like. It didn't roar. It didn't announce itself. It settled quietly like snow on branches. Then a text arrived. From my father. You need to call me immediately. The accountant says your mother transferred the family trust into your name. That can't be legal. Fix this. Now. I exhaled slowly. He still spoke to me as though I were an errand, not a person. Another message arrived, this time from my mother. Meredith, please. Your father is upset. Your sister is upset. Come home and let's figure this out together. Together. We had never done anything together. I saved both messages, then turned the phone off. The creek murmured softly under the ice. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A child laughed. A car door slammed. For a moment, the world felt normal, ordinary, unburdened by the Holt family's endless dysfunction. My breath fogged in front of me as I whispered to myself, Mom, what else did you protect me from? The wind rustled the frozen reeds on the bank as if answering. I straightened, wiped my eyes, and headed toward the bus station. There was only one place I needed to go now, the cabin on Glacier Road. The place I hadn't visited since my mother's funeral. The place she had always called her sanctuary. The place she'd told me in her final weeks that she hoped I would return to someday. The place where, according to Linda, more answers waited. I bought a ticket, boarded the bus, and took a seat by the window. The engine rumbled to life, and the town began to shrink behind me, one snow-covered house at a time. As we pulled away, I imagined my father pacing the kitchen, my mother wringing her hands, Madison tearing through drawers looking for documents she believed belonged to her. But the truth was already unfolding. Their empire had never been theirs. And now, piece by piece, it was slipping through their fingers, because they had built it atop my mother's silence and my compliance. The silence was gone. The compliance was over. And for the first time, they were about to learn what it meant to live without me. The bus wound its way through Birch Creek Valley, climbing steadily toward the mountains. Frost clung to the windows, blurring the towering pines into pale green shadows. I pressed my palm to the cold glass and breathed slowly as the landscape grew quieter, emptier, farther away from the Holt household with every passing mile. Somewhere between the ridges, my phone vibrated again, even though I had silenced most notifications. A single text slipped through from the county clerk. Documentation complete. Birch Hollow property fully verified under your name. Have a good day, Ms. Holt, Ms. Holt, only ever me. Not my father, not my mother, not Madison, me. I tucked the phone into my coat and leaned back as the bus crested the final hill. The cabin came into view below, small, weathered, and half-wrapped in snow, the chimney capped with ice. A thick band of fir trees circled the clearing like watchful sentinels. My heartbeat quickened. I hadn't been here since the week after my mother died. My father insisted it wasn't practical to keep the property, but I refused to sell it. I didn't know why then. I knew now. When the bus stopped, I stepped into air so cold it stung my teeth. Snow crunched under my boots as I made my way up the narrow path. The cabin smelled of cedar and memory. My key fit perfectly in the lock. The door creaked open. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. The plaid couch draped with a handmade quilt. The stone fireplace with soot still tracing the bricks. The bookshelf lined with Evelyn's favorites, the ones she would read aloud on quiet winter nights. I closed the door behind me and exhaled into the hush. It felt like she had just stepped out for a walk and would return at any moment. I stood still for a long time. Then I noticed a faint piece of twine tied around the handle of the pinewood wardrobe in the corner. My mother used twine for everything. She said knots were a language most people were too impatient to read. My stomach tightened. I crossed the room, pulled the wardrobe open, and found a small wooden box hidden beneath folded blankets. A simple maple box. No lock. Just a brass hinge, and a deep groove where my mother's thumb had touched it countless times. My breath caught. This was it. The evidence. The truth. The thing she had hinted at but never spoken of directly. I carried it to the table and sat down. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the lid. Inside lay several neatly labeled envelopes, a USB drive wrapped in paper, a small leather-bound notebook, and a printed legal document stamped with my mother's signature, and a gold seal bearing my name. My throat tightened. On top was a note. Meredith, if you've reached this box, it means the moment I feared has finally come. I'm sorry. I hoped they might change. But you must see the truth clearly. Love, Mom. I swallowed hard and opened the first envelope. Inside were copies of bank statements. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual until I saw the signatures. Familiar, curved, neat handwriting. My handwriting. Except I had never seen these documents before. My pulse slammed in my ears as I studied each page. Loans I hadn't taken. Transfers I hadn't authorized. A credit card I had never used. Every signature forged carefully, meticulously, but not perfectly. My father's slanted R, Madison's overconfident loops. Heat crawled up my neck. They had used my name, my identity, my credit. My mother must have collected these the moment she realized what was happening. I reached for the next envelope with shaking fingers. Inside were email printouts, messages between my father and Madison discussing redirecting funds using Meredith's accounts since she doesn't need them, and keeping the paperwork under her umbrella so the credit score doesn't dip. I couldn't breathe. My father's words were the worst. She won't fight us. She never does. My stomach twisted violently. I pressed my hand to my mouth and closed my eyes. The betrayal didn't surprise me, not entirely, but seeing it in ink, in their own words, stripped away any remnants of denial. The next envelope held something heavier. A USB drive. I slid it into my laptop, the one I kept in my backpack. A folder appeared instantly. Video files, audio files, photos. My hands hovered before clicking an audio file labeled Kitchen Holt House March. My mother's voice filled the room immediately. I know what you're doing, she said, her tone calm but unwavering. I know you used her name on the loan application. My father's voice responded rough with irritation. It's just paperwork, Evelyn. You worry too much. You're risking her credit, her future. She doesn't care about that kind of thing. Besides, his voice sharpened. It benefits the family. My mother inhaled sharply. No, it benefits you and Madison. A brief silence. Then Madison's voice smoothed dismissive. Mom, Meredith doesn't need all that money. She doesn't spend anything. She doesn't even notice half the stuff we put on her cards. Cards. Plural. My chest constricted. Madison continued. She should be grateful she has a purpose. You always baby her. My mother's response was so quiet, I leaned closer. I protect her, she said. And I will continue to protect her, even from you. The recording clicked off. I stared at the laptop, my hands curled into fists. My heartbeat thundered in my temples. They had siphoned from me for years, smiling, hugging, insisting we were family first, all while bleeding me dry. My mother knew. She confronted them, and she documented everything. I clicked another file. Video footage this time. My mother had positioned her phone on the counter, angled toward the dining room. The screen showed Madison holding a stack of envelopes. We'll just sign for her, she said. She never reads these things. Dad, your handwriting looks enough like hers. Just keep it consistent. My father nodded, flipping through the papers. This refinance gives us breathing room. We'll pay her back eventually. They both laughed. Eventually meant never. My stomach churned. I clicked another file. Audio only. My mother speaking to someone her attorney knew. The voice wasn't Linda's. It was a man. She'll need protection, my mother said. She trusts too easily. A pause. She thinks they love her, but they only love what she does for them. The man replied, Are you certain you want to transfer everything to her that will create conflict? It's already coming, my mother said quietly. I won't live to shield her myself. So I'm building the walls she'll need. My throat closed. I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead. She did this for me, all of this, alone. while dying. The weight of that sacrifice settled into my bones, heavy and undeniable. The next item in the box was the leather-bound notebook. My mother's handwriting filled the first page, a record of everything they've done, in case Meredith ever needs proof. I flipped through the pages, meticulous notes dated over 3 years, instances of forged signatures, unauthorized withdrawals, conversations overheard, items pawned, vacations charged to accounts I didn't know existed, each entry carved deeper into the truth. They hadn't just taken advantage of my kindness. They had built an entire lifestyle on it. A soft creak startled me. I glanced up. Wind brushed against the cabin windows, making the glass hum. I placed the notebook down and reached for the final document. A notarized letter. This one addressed to me with my mother's full signature and a witness seal. To my daughter, Meredith. If you are reading this, you have discovered what your father and sister have done in your name. You must not feel shame. They relied on your goodness to shield their wrongdoing. I forced myself to keep reading. You have a right to protect what is yours. You have a right to say no. I am giving you the tools they hoped you would never have. A tear fell onto the page. Be strong, not for them, but for yourself. Love always, Mom. I closed the document and pressed it to my heart. Outside, the wind howled through the pines. Snow drifted against the windows in soft sheets. The cabin felt both safe and unbearably small, the weight of truth pressing against its wooden walls. My phone began vibrating violently. I hesitated before turning it over. 37 missed calls from my father. 22 from my mother, 16 from Madison, 3 from unknown numbers. Then 1 new voicemail, 1 new text. Madison Dad says the bank froze everything. They said the primary owner must come in person. Did you do this then? Another message. Madison, you can't do this to us. Come home right now. I looked at the box, at the files, at the proof, at the truth my mother had spent her final strength preserving. I wiped my face, closed the lid, and stood slowly. My voice came out steady. No, Madison, I whispered into the empty room. I'm not coming home. Then stronger. You're coming to me. The wind rattled the window pane like applause. I slipped the box into my backpack, zipped it, and pulled on my coat. Tomorrow I would return to town. Tomorrow I would meet with Linda again. Tomorrow I would begin the process my mother had prepared me for. But tonight, I let myself sit on the edge of the bed, the quilt rough beneath my palms, and whispered into the silence. Thank you, Mom. I see it now. The cabin's old furnace rumbled to life, filling the space with warm air. And in that warmth, I realized something unmistakable. The Holt Empire wasn't collapsing because I left. It was collapsing because it had been rotting for years, held up only by me, and I had finally stepped aside. Tomorrow the reckoning would begin. I woke to the sound of wind brushing against the cabin windows, a soft, rhythmic whisper that felt strangely comforting. The air inside was warm, but the world outside was buried beneath another night's snowfall. For a moment I lay still beneath the quilt, listening to the creaks of the old wooden beams and the faint hum of the furnace. The cabin felt alive, as if it had been waiting for me. Then my phone lit up again. 59 missed calls. The Holt family was unraveling faster than even Linda had predicted. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes before scrolling through the messages. They came in waves: panic, anger, confusion, desperation. Dad, the accountant says the trust fund isn't accessible. You need to fix this. Mom, your father is stressed. Come home immediately. Dad again. We need access to the business account. They said authorization is under one name only. Is this a joke, Madison? Why is the power about to be shut off? You better answer me. Another message. Madison, this is cruelty, Meredith. You're punishing us. I exhaled through my nose. Punishment required intent. All I had done was walk away. Their collapse was not my doing, it was the consequence of their own greed, their own neglect, their own belief that I was nothing more than a tool. I set the phone aside before I could fall into old habits, responding, soothing, fixing. That version of me had died the moment I placed the keys on the Christmas dinner table. The kettle on the stove hissed gently as I heated water for tea. The scent of pine drifted through the cracked window. In the stillness, I allowed myself a moment to breathe before facing everything waiting for me below this mountain. But the silence didn't last long. My phone vibrated again. A voicemail left at 6:47 a.m. My father's voice boomed through the speaker before I could stop myself from listening. "Meredith, this nonsense ends today. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you get back here. The bank says you changed the primary owner on the accounts. We need those funds. Do not ignore me." He paused, breath heavy. "And the house, your mother must have made some mistake with paperwork. We'll fix it. Just come home." His voice cracked on the last line. Not with worry for me, with worry for himself. Another message played automatically. My mother this time quieter. "Sweetheart, whatever this is, we can work it out. Your father is upset, and Madison is... well, she's confused. Come home and we'll sort the money situation together." I almost laughed. Money situation. As if what they'd done was a minor bookkeeping error. The third message was Madison. "Okay, I get it. You're mad. Fine. But you're making this a big deal. We need access to the accounts right now. Dad can't finish the payroll for the construction team. You're messing up everything. Stop being dramatic and answer your phone." I deleted the voicemail. I drank my tea slowly, letting the steam warm my face. The cabin was quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat, steady, calm, strong. By 9, I bundled into my coat and stepped outside. The snow shimmered beneath the sunlight untouched except for deer tracks leading toward the woods. I followed them until the trees opened to a small clearing where my mother used to sit with a book in her lap and thermos of cocoa at her feet. I felt her presence there, faint but steady, like the warmth of a memory pressed against my shoulder. "You prepared me for this," I whispered. The wind carried my breath away. When I returned to the cabin, the phone was buzzing again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, assuming it was another real estate agent demanding to speak to the Holt family representative. But the transcript surprised me. "Ms. Holt, this is Daniel from the First National Bank. We need to speak with you urgently. Your family attempted to withdraw from an account ending in 3821, but the transactions were denied. Please contact us as soon as possible." My family had finally run headfirst into the wall they didn't know existed. Inside the wooden box beneath the documents I had read last night were several more items I hadn't opened. My mother's notebook, the legal papers, the USB, all of it waited patiently for me to finish this transformation. But first, I had a call to make. I dialed Linda. She answered before the first ring finished. "Are you ready?" "Yes," I said. "They're spiraling. It's happening fast. As expected." I could hear her shifting papers. "They tried to withdraw from the trust this morning. The bank flagged it instantly." "What happens now?" "You do nothing," she said. "Absolutely nothing. Let them panic. Let them show their hand. When they realize the full extent of what your mother did, they'll attempt something rash. That's when we step in." I swallowed. Something rash. They might show up at the cabin, or try to force your hand with guilt. Or legal threats. She paused. "But they can't win. Not this time." I closed my eyes. Relief, fear, anger, and something else resolve settled in my chest. "Linda," I said quietly. I found the evidence. She didn't ask what I meant. She simply said, "Good. Your mother was meticulous. She knew what she was up against." I hesitated. "There's more than I realized, more than I wanted to know. Truth is always heavy," Linda murmured. "But it doesn't break you. It shapes you." My eyes drifted to the wooden box on the table. "Then let it," I whispered. After we hung up, I sat again with the notebook and the recorded conversations from the USB. Each file, each note, each signature deepened the wounds, but it also sharpened my purpose. I understood now how thoroughly my family had entangled themselves in my life, not through love, through dependency, through manipulation, through the belief that I would always choose peace over self-respect. But peace without dignity wasn't peace at all. Around noon, after hours spent sorting through documents, I stepped outside for fresh air. Only a few minutes had passed before my phone buzzed once more. This time it was a video call from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me, the echo of a younger version who still sought her affection, made me swipe the screen. Her face appeared instantly framed by the expensive kitchen lighting. Her hair was perfect, her expression tight. "Sweetheart," she began too brightly. "There you are. We've been so worried." I said nothing. "We need to talk about these accounts," she continued quickly. "Your father says the mortgage automatically transferred to your name, which must be some kind of clerical mistake. We should sort that out before it becomes messy." "It's not a mistake," I said. Her smile faltered. "Meredith, be reasonable. The house belongs to the whole family." "No," I said, "it doesn't." Her eyes narrowed. "Is this about Christmas Eve? Madison was out of line?" "Yes, but that doesn't justify Mom," I interrupted softly. "Stop pretending this is about a dinner argument." She stiffened. "This is about years," I said. "Years of using me, years of signing my name, years of borrowing money in my identity, years of assuming I wouldn't notice." Her silence was thunderous. "I know everything now," I said. "Everything Mom protected me from." Her face drained of color. "Meredith? Who told you that? What did you see?" So she knew. She knew exactly what I was talking about. I lifted my gaze to the camera. I found the evidence. Her lips parted in shock. I didn't show her the documents. I didn't need to. She understood, and she panicked. "Your sister and father didn't mean any harm," she said quickly. "We always intended to pay you back. It was just temporary." "You were never supposed to find out I'm hanging up now," I said. "Meredith." I ended the call and turned off my phone entirely. For the first time, the silence felt like power. By late afternoon, I was reorganizing the evidence into folders, labeling everything my mother had documented, not out of revenge, out of necessity. There was a knock on the cabin door just as the sun dipped behind the ridge. My breath caught. I moved slowly toward the window, heart pounding. A car I recognized parked in the clearing, a dark blue sedan with snow clinging to the tires. Madison's. I stepped back from the door. Another knock, louder this time. "Meredith," she shouted. "Open the door." "No." "Not yet." Another round of pounding vibrated through the cabin walls. "You can't hide up here forever," she yelled. "We need to talk. I didn't move." Minutes passed before her footsteps retreated. The engine roared, tires spun, and the car disappeared into the trees. I waited until absolute silence returned before letting out the breath I'd been holding. She had come for one reason, to corner me emotionally where I was weakest, but she didn't know that the version of me she preyed on no longer existed. As night blanketed the mountains, I lit the small lamp beside the bed and read my mother's notebook again, her words, her warnings, her strength. By the time I closed the final page, the decision was made. A confrontation was coming, but not on their terms, on mine. The next morning, the sky was a washed-out gray, the kind that pressed low over the mountains and made everything feel colder than it was. I sat by the cabin window with a cup of tea, listening to the faint groan of shifting branches outside. The world looked frozen, still untouched, except for the steady vibration of my phone, which I had reluctantly powered back on. 17 new voicemails. 8 from my father, 4 from my mother, 3 from Madison, 2 from an unknown number. I deleted most without listening, but one voicemail, a short one, caught my attention. "Ms. Holt, this is Cameron Price, your family's accountant. I need to speak with you urgently. Please call me." My stomach tightened. Cameron had been the Holt family accountant since before I was born. Reserved, meticulous, painfully ethical, one of the few people in my parents' orbit I actually trusted. If he was calling me directly, then something had gone very wrong. Or maybe something had gone very right. I stared at the phone for a long moment before dialing him back. He answered on the first ring. "Meredith, yes. What's going on?" A long exhale came through the line. "I'm glad you called. I didn't want to leave details over voicemail. I assume you know something about the trust and the property transfers. I know everything," I said softly. "Then you understand why your father and sister are panicking." I didn't respond. He continued. "Yesterday morning your father contacted me insisting there was a system error locking him out of all accounts. He demanded I override the permissions. When I explained I legally couldn't, he became volatile. That sounded like him." He said. Cameron continued hesitantly, "My wife must have been out of her mind. No way she put Meredith in charge of the estate." I flinched, despite myself. Cameron went on. "I reviewed the estate documents again to confirm. Everything is valid. But here's what you need to know, Meredith. The accounts aren't just inaccessible to them. They're in critical condition." My breath caught. "Critical how your father and Madison have accumulated significant debt over the last 3 years. I've warned them repeatedly. They ignored every warning. They refinanced twice. They leveraged the family home. They took loans under your name. I know about the forgeries I interrupted. My mother left proof." A stunned silence followed. "Then I'm relieved," he said quietly. "You're going to need that evidence." I closed my eyes briefly. The tea in my hands had gone cold. "There's more," Cameron added. "Your father tried to withdraw $70,000 yesterday. The bank flagged it. When they refused the withdrawal, he demanded they escalate the issue." I let out a slow breath. "He thinks money will fix everything. He thinks control will," Cameron corrected gently. "But Meredith?" "He's run out of both." I rubbed my forehead. "Is the family at risk of losing anything?" "Losing." He let out a dry laugh. "They've already lost everything. They just don't realize it yet." A strange mix of grief and vindication twisted inside my chest. Cameron shifted papers. I could hear the rustling on his end. "Your father's business is weeks away from collapse. Madison's credit is ruined. Your mother's final savings were drained trying to cover debts they hid from you." My jaw tightened. "She knew. But she didn't tell me. She was trying to protect you, but she also prepared for the day you'd need the truth." I glanced at the wooden box on the table, the letters, the files, the USB drive. "She did." "Listen carefully," Cameron said. "Your family will try everything guilt manipulation threats to pull you back. But the only way to resolve this legally and financially is for you to distance yourself. Completely. That's already happening." "Good. Now here's the real reason I called." Papers rustled with urgency. "Your father has scheduled a meeting with an attorney this afternoon. He intends to challenge the estate and dispute your ownership of the assets." My stomach dropped. "Can he?" "No," Cameron said firmly. "But he doesn't understand that. Or he refuses to. What will happen when he tries, he'll lose, immediately, and he'll be furious." I swallowed. I knew my father's temper. I had felt it in small, cutting ways, growing up, quiet comments that sliced deeper than yelling ever could. But this time, he wouldn't just be angry. He would be desperate. "Meredith," Cameron said gently, "you need protection. Please tell me you have someone advising you." "A lawyer," I said. "My mother arranged it." "Good. Listen to her. Protect yourself. And if you need anything, call me." "Thank you, Cameron." He hesitated. "And Meredith." "Yes, I'm proud of you. I've watched you hold that family together for years. You deserve better than what they did." My eyes stung. "Thank you," I whispered. We hung up. The cabin felt colder now. I wrapped my hands around the mug again, even though the tea was cold. My father planning legal action wasn't surprising. Humiliation was intolerable to him. and nothing humiliated him more than losing control. Still, I couldn't focus on him. Not yet. I gathered the envelopes, the USB, the notebook, everything my mother left, and arranged them neatly into my backpack. The leather felt warm from the wood stove. The weight of the evidence settled against my spine like armor. I was about to leave the cabin to meet Linda when I heard something that froze my breath. Voices. Outside. Are we sure she's here? That's what Dad said. He tracked her phone. She better fix this before he loses the business. Madison and... my mother. No, not my mother. Claudia. I moved slowly toward the window and peeked through the curtain. Two figures trudged through the snow, bundled in coats and scarves, breath puffing into the cold air. Madison's sharp profile, my mother's stiff posture. They were here. My heart pounded once hard. I backed away from the window. The knock on the cabin door rattled the frame. Meredith Madison shouted, "We know you're in there!" Another knock, harder. "Open this door right now!" My hands curled into fists. I didn't move, not yet. Silence, then my mother's voice, soft, coaxing, dripping with practiced sweetness. "Honey, sweetheart, please open the door. We just want to talk. Explain, manipulate, rewrite, guilt, shame, control." I had lived that cycle my entire life. No more. I stood completely still as Madison's fury bubbled over. "Do you think you can hide from us?" she screamed. "You destroyed everything. Dad's business is collapsing. The house is frozen. The bank won't help us." "That's enough, Madison," my mother hissed. "No, she needs to hear this." Madison pounded on the door. "You owe us. You owe us everything." I inhaled sharply. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper. "Madison!" But Madison wouldn't stop. "Who do you think you are?" she shouted. "You think you're better than us. You think you can walk away and just let everything fall apart. You think any of this was yours. You were supposed to help us, not abandon us." My blood roared in my ears. Behind the door, my mother attempted her old persuasive tone. "Please, sweetheart, we're your family." Family. The word tasted like ash. A long silence followed, broken only by the wind. Then Madison muttered something I couldn't quite hear. The car door slammed, then another. Tires spun in the snow, scraping against ice. The car sped down the mountain road, growing quieter until the engine disappeared entirely. I stood frozen for a long time. Then I sank slowly onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally realized how completely I had separated myself from them. They couldn't reach me anymore, not through guilt, not through anger, not through need. A line had been drawn, one my mother had prepared, one I had chosen. When I finally stood, the air felt clearer. I grabbed my coat, slung the backpack over my shoulder, and stepped outside. The snow crunched softly beneath my boots, and for a moment I looked toward the road where their footprints were already disappearing under fresh snowfall. "Goodbye." I whispered not to them, but to the version of myself who had once believed I had to make myself smaller to be loved. I headed down the path toward the bus stop. It was time to meet with Linda. Time to prepare. Time to finish what my mother started. Linda's office looked different the second time I entered it, brighter somehow, as if the winter sun had shifted just enough to reveal details I hadn't noticed before. The embossed legal certificates lining the wall, the thick curtains framing the tall windows, the scent of sandalwood drifting softly from a candle on her desk. A place built for truth, not performance. I stepped inside with my backpack pulled close to my body, the weight of the evidence grounding me. Linda stood when she saw me, and for a moment her stern professionalism softened. "You look steady," she said. "I feel steady. Good. You'll need to be." I sat placing the wooden box on the table. She rested her hands on it as though examining something sacred. "This," she said quietly, "is more than enough." I exhaled tension, loosening slightly from my shoulders. "Then, what do we do now?" Linda slid several documents toward me. "Your father retained a local attorney yesterday. From what I gather, he intends to challenge the estate. Today at 2, he's scheduled a meeting with the attorney and the bank manager. I expect he will attempt to accuse you of manipulating Evelyn. I blinked in disbelief. Me manipulating Mom. People like your father rewrite history when it benefits them, Linda said. Always remember that. But his argument will fall apart immediately because the estate isn't just legally airtight, it's ethically airtight. Your mother structured everything without your involvement. And we have proof. I opened my backpack and pulled out the envelopes, the USB, the notebook, placing them in a neat stack. Linda's eyes lit with a kind of fierce satisfaction. This will end them. Is that what we want? I whispered. She studied me. We're not ending them. They ended themselves. You're simply stepping out of the wreckage. I nodded slowly. Linda pulled closer a legal pad. Here's our plan. You're not to reach out to them. You're not to respond to texts, calls, emails. You do nothing. We observe, we gather, and when the moment comes, we present everything. And that moment is soon, she said. Very soon. Before she could elaborate, her desk phone rang a sharp, old-fashioned sound that cut through the quiet. Linda answered without taking her eyes off me. Yes, this is she. I understand. Can you repeat that? Her brows arched slightly. I see. And did you inform him that only the primary trustee can authorize that? Good, thank you. She hung up. I raised an eyebrow. That was the bank manager. Your father attempted to liquidate a joint investment account. She leaned back in her chair. He was denied. A hollow laugh escaped me unbidden. He really thinks he can just force the system to obey him. He's losing control, Linda said simply. When people panic, they reveal themselves. A knock interrupted us. Linda called, "Come in." Her receptionist stepped inside, holding a printed sheet. "Another fax came in for you. Urgent." Linda took it, scanned it, then passed it to me. My own name stared back, bold, almost accusatory. Request for emergency trustee hearing. Filed by Richard Holt. I don't believe this, I murmured. Linda chuckled softly. Oh, I do. This is exactly what I predicted. What does this mean? It means he's desperate. He's trying to contest your position as trustee. But that won't work. Why not? Because 1, your mother created the trust. 2, you never accepted any changes or transfers willingly. And 3, she tapped the wooden box. Because we have the truth. I looked at it, the box my mother had prepared like a time capsule of survival, evidence of forgery, financial abuse, conspiracy, neglect, and manipulation. Evidence that undermined every claim they might make against me. Evidence of a life I had lived without fully recognizing it. Linda leaned forward. What we do next depends entirely on how far your family is willing to go. She was right. And I had a feeling they were willing to go further than I expected. Almost on cue, my phone vibrated. A new message, from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Holt, this is attorney James Mallory. I represent your father. I'd like to speak with you before this becomes unnecessarily complicated. I read the text twice. Linda saw my expression. Show me. I handed her the phone. Her lips curled into something between irritation and amusement. He wasted no time. She typed a reply herself. This is Attorney Graves. All communication must go through me. Do not contact my client again. She hit send. Done, she said. A sense of relief washed over me so quickly it left me breathless. For the first time, I didn't have to defend myself alone. Linda walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick binder. This, she said, is your mother's full estate plan. Everything she set in place. I want you to read it, understand it, own it, because this, she tapped the cover, is what your family is fighting against, and they will lose. I opened the binder. And my world shifted again. My mother had thought through everything, every contingency, every loophole, every possible betrayal. Legal safeguards, trustee clauses, property protections, inheritance restrictions. She had structured everything so thoroughly, so intelligently, that undoing it would require dismantling the entire legal system. She hadn't just left me assets. She had left me armor. I lifted my eyes from the binder. Linda. How long was she planning all this? Years, she said. But she accelerated it the moment she realized what your father and sister were doing. She knew they'd try to take everything I whispered. She knew they'd try to take you. Silence unfurled between us, heavy, reverent. Linda finally broke it. There's more. She reached into her desk and pulled out another envelope. My name was written across the front. I frowned. I didn't see this before. You weren't supposed to, she said. Evelyn left it with me to give to you only when your family filed a legal challenge. My pulse quickened. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a short, handwritten note from my mother. Meredith, when they challenge you, do not be afraid. You are not alone. You never were. I saw the truth long before you could speak it. Behind the note was a small USB drive. What's on this? I asked. Linda's tone grew solemn. Recordings, conversations between your father and sister, the kind of evidence courts don't overlook. My throat tightened. Your mother anticipated every move they're making, Linda said softly, including this one. I slid the USB into my backpack, adding it to the growing arsenal. Linda checked her watch. Your father's meeting starts in 1 hour. He'll come out furious, and he will come straight for you. I felt my pulse quicken. Should I stay here? No, she said. You should go somewhere that honors your mother's intentions. Somewhere quiet. The cabin. She smiled. Yes, but before you go, there's one more thing. She pulled out a document labeled Emergency Restraining Order, Template Financial Abuse, Harassment. My chest tightened. Do you think I'll need this? That depends entirely on your father, Linda said. But I want you to have it, just in case. Her words were careful, measured, rehearsed. She had seen too many families like mine fall apart under the weight of entitlement. Come back tomorrow, she said. We will review everything after their meeting implodes. I nodded. She looked at me with something almost like pride. Your mother was right. You're stronger than you know. I slung the backpack over my shoulder, gripping the strap tightly. I'm trying to be. You already are. Outside, snow had begun to fall, slow, delicate flakes drifting through the air like feathers. The cold bit my cheeks as I walked down the street, the weight of the binder, the box, the evidence grounding every step. My phone vibrated again. A call from Madison. I declined it. Then a message. I saw Dad's lawyer. He says you're in serious trouble. Call me now. I smiled to myself. Of course she believed that. She had always mistaken loudness for power manipulation, for strategy entitlement, for authority. But real power didn't shout. It built quietly. It prepared. It endured. I reached the corner and saw a reflection in the storefront window. My reflection. Standing taller, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Not the Meredith who once apologized for taking up space. Not the Meredith who spent years cushioning her family from the consequences of their own greed. A new Meredith. A woman standing in the center of her own life for the first time. I whispered into the settling snow, Mom, I hope you can see this. And for a moment, a brief, impossible moment, I swore I felt warmth brush the back of my hand, as if someone were guiding me forward. I didn't look back. By the time I returned to the cabin, the sky had shifted from pale gray to a bruised lavender promising snow before nightfall. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, greeted by the comforting scent of pine logs and the faint warmth left from the morning fire. I shrugged off my coat, set the backpack on the wooden table, and inhaled deeply. Then my phone lit up. 14 new messages, 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I ignored them. Instead, I moved to the kettle, filled it, and placed it on the stove. The silence around me felt thick, like the cabin itself was waiting, listening for what would come next. At 3:42 p.m., the first voicemail forced its way through the quiet. I didn't want to listen. But I did. My father's voice blasted through the speaker, louder than I expected. Meredith, you have made a complete fool of us. A shaky inhale. The attorney says the trust can't be altered. They say everything is yours, everything. The house, the accounts, the assets. How could your mother have done this? His voice cracked, the anger turning brittle. You need to fix this. Immediately. We're meeting as a family tonight. You will be there. The voicemail ended abruptly. I didn't move. The kettle hissed softly, steam curling upward. Another voicemail began automatically, this one from Madison. Mir, what the hell did you do? She sounded panicked, breathless. Dad's furious. Mom is crying. The lawyer says we have no claim to anything. They said, she lowered her voice. They said the evidence your mother left makes our case impossible. I didn't even know there was evidence. What did she leave you? What are you hiding? A trembling exhale. Come home. We can negotiate. I ended the voicemail before it finished. Negotiate. As if this were a business deal. As if I hadn't been the family's silent backbone for years. The third voicemail had no introduction, just Meredith, please, my mother. Her voice was exhausted, small, almost unrecognizable. We're losing everything. Your father went to the bank, he was humiliated. Your sister is terrified. This isn't who you are. Please, please come home and talk to us. My throat tightened, but not with sympathy, with clarity. This wasn't who they thought I was. They had only ever seen the version of me that served them, the version that bent, the version that apologized, the version that covered up their mistakes. And that version was gone. I replayed the last line of my mother's message. This isn't who you are, but it was. This was who I had always been, someone who endured quietly until she didn't. Someone who would burn down the structures built from her labor if they became cages. I turned off the voicemail. The kettle whistled. I removed it from the stove and poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, letting the fragrant steam rise around my face. 5 minutes of silence passed. Then the phone rang again, this time from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the transcript popped up on my screen. It was the bank manager. Ms. Holt, your father attempted to transfer funds from your personal investment account. We denied the request, but you may want to contact your attorney. My pulse quickened. He had tried again. I reached for my phone, ready to call Linda, when another message appeared, this one a group text from the family chat. Dad family meeting at 6 p.m. non-negotiable. Madison. You owe us an explanation. Mom, please Meredith, we need you. My lips curved into a small humorless smile. There it was. Not we miss you, not we love you, not we're sorry, we need you. The truth of our entire relationship distilled into 3 words. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my father sent directly to me. If you do not show up tonight, we will come find you. The threat hung in the air like smoke. I sat down, set my mug aside, and stared at the wooden box on the table. My mother had anticipated all of this, and she had prepared me for what came next. I opened the box again. The notebook waited at the top pages, filled with her precise handwriting, chronicling every misstep, every forgery, every manipulation. Beneath it, the USB drive and the folder of financial records. But today what caught my attention was the envelope marked, "For when they turn on you." My pulse steadied. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing a short message. Daughter. If they threaten, you do not go to them. Make them come to the truth instead. You have nothing to fear. You have already won. Mom, my chest tightened. I closed the envelope, slipped it into my pocket, and sat quietly for several minutes. The fire crackled in the hearth. The wind pressed against the windows. Snowflakes drifted past in slow spirals. Then the phone rang again. But this time it wasn't a threat. It was Cameron Price. Did you hear the news? He asked as soon as I answered. What news? Your father's business partner filed a fraud report against him this afternoon. My breath caught. What? Apparently your father diverted company funds into a personal account last month, and now that everything is frozen, his partner noticed. I leaned forward in my chair. What does that mean? It means Cameron said carefully that financial investigators are getting involved. If they discover the forged documents tied to your name, the consequences for your father and sister will be severe. My pulse slammed. This was never your burden to carry, he added gently. Your mother knew that. Now, others will finally see it too. I closed my eyes. A strange combination of grief and relief washed over me. Thank you, Cameron. Stay with your attorney, he warned. Your father is unstable right now. He may try to frame you to save himself. My stomach twisted. I understand. After hanging up, I sat in silence, processing everything. The Holt Empire wasn't just collapsing, it was exploding. From the inside. Each piece of truth my mother saved was a match dropped into the fragile foundation my family had built on lies. I checked my watch. 5:12 p.m. If they kept their schedule, the family meeting was in 48 minutes. They expected me to walk into their house alone, unprotected, unaware. But I wasn't going, and they weren't prepared for that. At 5:23 p.m., another text came. Mom, your father is furious. Please come calmly. Do not escalate things. I stared at the message, incredulous. Do not escalate. All I had done was leave. They were the ones drowning in consequences, thrashing, clawing, grasping for the version of me who would make everything better. But she was gone. I shut off my phone and slipped it into my coat. As I moved toward the door, the last of the sunlight disappeared, leaving the mountains bathed in icy blue twilight. Outside, the air was sharp and clean. I walked to the edge of the clearing past the line of pines and looked toward the distant ridge where the lights of Birch Creek flickered faintly in the valley below. My family was down there unraveling, panicking, plotting, fracturing, and somehow still believing they could summon me back with a command. But my mother's voice echoed in my mind, steady, clear, absolute. Do not go to them. Make them come to the truth instead. I pulled my coat tighter and began walking toward the small mailbox at the entrance of the property. A light dusting of snow coated the top. I brushed it away and opened the box. Inside was a single envelope, delivered earlier that day, addressed to me in my father's handwriting. I opened it under the fading light. It was a typed letter, formal and cold. Effective immediately, you are hereby notified that your financial interference has caused irreparable harm to the Holt family. Failure to comply with our demands will result in legal action, public exposure, and termination of familial support. I read it twice. Then I laughed, quiet and shaking. Family support. They had never supported me. They had used me, controlled me, lived off of me. And now that the foundation was gone, they were scrambling to intimidate me back into position. I folded the letter, placed it back in the mailbox, and whispered into the still air, no. The mountains held the word gently, as if agreeing. When I returned to the cabin, I found myself standing in front of the old mirror hanging near the bedroom door. My reflection looked back tired, yes, but steady, grounded, unafraid. This was the turning point. The moment when silence shifted into action. I zipped up my backpack, grabbed the evidence, and stepped out into the night. Not to go to them, but to prepare for when they came to me. Because they would. And when they did, they would face the truth they had buried for years. The truth my mother preserved. The truth that would dismantle everything they had built on my back. The Holt Empire wasn't falling. It had already fallen. They just hadn't hit the ground yet. I didn't sleep that night. The cabin was quiet, too quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat by the fire with my mother's notebook open on my lap, the flames casting slow-moving shadows across the pages filled with her handwriting. Every word felt like a thread stitching me to her, steady, deliberate, unbreakable. By dawn, frost had formed on the inside of the windows. The sky beyond them glowed pale pink, a deceptive softness that did nothing to ease the tension building inside me. At 7:23 a.m., my phone vibrated violently on the table. A single notification lit the screen. Family meeting results, urgent, sent by Madison. I drew a slow breath, unlocked the phone, and opened the message. Mir, you need to answer. Dad's lawyer says if you don't comply, they will issue a formal complaint. They're bringing everything to you this afternoon. Be home by 2. Be home. As if the Holt house was still my home. As if I still belonged inside those walls. As if they hadn't spent years hollowing out every corner with their expectations, their demands, their endless taking. I closed the message. The phone buzzed again immediately. This time it was my father. You will not avoid this. We are coming to you. Prepare to talk. I stared at the screen for several seconds before turning off the phone completely. Today was going to be the day everything collided. And I needed to be ready. I packed the evidence into a single organized case, my mother's notebook. The envelopes printed emails, bank statements, the USB drives, and the notarized letters. The weight of it was substantial, but not suffocating. It felt like armor. Linda had told me not to meet them alone. She was right. I left the cabin just after 8 boots crunching through the icy snow and took the first bus back into town. My breath rose in thin white streams as I stepped onto the sidewalk in front of Linda's office. She was already waiting at the door, a thick folder in her hands. You'll need this, she said simply. I followed her inside. The receptionist nodded at me with a sympathetic glance before turning back to her computer. We entered Linda's office and she closed the door behind us. They'll arrive around 2, she said. They've made that clear in multiple emails I've received this morning. Yes. Linda set the folder on the desk and pressed her palms flat against it. I want to be absolutely sure you understand what will happen today. I understand, I said. They'll try to bully me into surrender. They'll use guilt and threats. And when that doesn't work, they'll try to discredit me. Correct. They'll claim my mother was manipulated, confused. Yes, and they'll expect me to break. Linda held my gaze. Will you? No, I said. Not anymore. A faint hint of pride flickered across her expression. Good. Because today is a turning point. After this, the legal system will take over. You won't need to confront them again, not directly. I felt my shoulders drop with relief. I'll be here the whole time, Linda continued. And remember, you do not raise your voice. You do not argue. You do not justify. You simply present the truth. I nodded. Truth had a weight that didn't require shouting. By 10, Linda had briefed me on everything: my rights, their lack of rights, the documentation we were prepared to present, and the expected tactics my family might attempt. At 11, she stepped out for a conference call, leaving me alone in the office. I wandered to the window, watching cars pass along the street below their tires, hissing across slush. For a moment I wondered where my mother would choose to stand if she were here. Behind me, the door opened softly. I turned. Cameron Price stood in the doorway, holding a steaming paper cup of coffee and a folder tucked under his arm. His expression was heavy, as though today weighed on him too. Thought you might need this, he said, offering the cup. Thank you. I accepted it gratefully. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I spoke with your father this morning. My stomach tightened. How bad is it bad? He said bluntly. He's in full collapse mode. Angry, panicked, blaming everyone except himself. That sounded painfully familiar. He's convinced he can overturn the estate, Cameron continued. He thinks if he pushes hard enough you'll surrender or someone will intervene. No one's intervening, I said. Cameron gave a small, almost sad smile. That's what I told him. I sipped the coffee, letting the warmth spread through my chest. He told me something else, Cameron added. He said, and I quote, "She has no idea what she owes us." My jaw clenched. Owes us. As if my entire existence had been a debt they were waiting to collect. Cameron placed the folder on Linda's desk. You owe them nothing, Meredith. Nothing. I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. He hesitated before turning to leave. Your mother trusted you more than anyone. She believed you could do this. When he left, the room felt fuller, somehow not empty, but reinforced. At 1:15 p.m., the receptionist knocked, sticking her head into the office. They just called, she said softly. Your family is on their way. I inhaled sharply, steadying myself. Linda returned moments later, fully composed in her dark blazer, her hair neatly pinned, her expression unreadable. It's time, she said. We moved into the conference room, a long rectangular table, leather chairs, soft lighting, and a large window overlooking the snowy street. The table felt too clean, too calm for what was about to happen. Linda set the evidence binder in front of her and gestured for me to sit beside her. Let them speak first, she said. They'll incriminate themselves without realizing it. I nodded. At exactly 2:07 p.m., the door burst open. Madison stormed in, first red-cheeked and furious, her boots clacking sharply against the floor. My mother followed, looking exhausted and brittle. My father entered last, tall, stiff jaw clenched in a way that promised violence, not physical, but emotional. He carried a stack of papers, probably his pathetic attempt at a defense. The room went silent. My father stared at me like I was a stranger. Sit up straight, he snapped automatically, a reflex of control he didn't realize no longer worked. I didn't move. Madison threw her purse onto the table. This is ridiculous. We shouldn't even be here. Dad, tell them. My father's voice boomed. We are here because my daughter. He pointed at me like I was a criminal, has created a completely unnecessary crisis. She has interfered with family assets, locked us out of accounts, and stolen property that does not belong to her. Linda cleared her throat. Mr. Holt, the property and assets you're referring to were legally transferred into Meredith's name by her mother. Your accusations are unfounded. He turned on her. I didn't ask for your opinion. That's unfortunate, Linda replied calmly, because you are going to hear it anyway. Madison slammed both hands onto the table. You are not taking everything, Meredith. This is insane. Mom didn't intend this. She was sick. Dad already told the lawyer that she wasn't in her right mind when she set this up. I folded my hands on the table, my voice steady. Mom was in complete control when she made her decisions. You don't know that Madison snapped? Yes, I said quietly. I do. My father rolled his eyes. Oh, here we go. The dramatic victim routine. I looked at him, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with a kind of cold clarity I had never felt before. I'm not a victim, I said. Not anymore. He opened his mouth to retaliate, but Linda placed a hand on the evidence binder. With your permission, she said, we would like to begin presenting the documentation your wife compiled. My mother's breath caught. Madison blinked. What documentation? Linda opened the binder and placed the first sheet in front of them, a copy of a forged loan document, signed in my handwriting, except not in my handwriting. My father's face drained of color. Madison's eyes widened. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. This, Linda said, is the beginning. She laid down another document, another forgery, and another, and another. The room fell into suffocating silence as document after document slid across the table, proof of every theft, every lie, every manipulation they had buried under years of gaslighting. My mother whispered, "Oh, God." Madison's face twisted. These are fake. They are not fake," Linda said sharply. "They are authenticated. They are time-stamped. They match transfers, withdrawals, and emails your mother saved." "Emails," my father croaked. Linda pressed a button on a small speaker. My mother's recorded voice filled the room. "I know what you're doing." My father flinched. Madison froze. The audio continued, my mother confronting them, pleading with them, warning them. Every word was a scalpel slicing through their denial. When the recording ended, no one spoke. Finally, my father rose slowly from his chair, staring at me with something like hatred and fear tangled together. "You," he whispered, "have destroyed this family." "No," I said, rising too. "You destroyed it. Mom tried to protect me from you. And now I'm protecting myself." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You will regret this." Linda stepped between us. "Mr. Holt, this meeting is over." Madison grabbed her purse, eyes blazing. "We're not done." "Yes," I said softly. "We are." My mother paused at the doorway, looking back at me with tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Tears of shame, not grief. "Meredith," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. They left. The door clicked shut, and the room felt lighter than it had in years. Linda exhaled. "You handled that perfectly." I sank back into my chair, shaking with adrenaline. "It's only the beginning," she said. "But you won today." I looked at the empty doorway. "No," I whispered. "Mom won today." And in that moment, for the first time, I felt it. The shift, the break, the freedom. I sat in Linda's office long after the door closed behind my family, feeling the remnants of their voices, like cold drafts lingering in the air. For a moment, the world was too quiet, as if everything inside me had been hollowed out. My hands lay folded on the table, but I could still feel the trembling, soft, subtle, the aftershock of a decade of silence, finally breaking apart. Linda slipped a glass of water in front of me. "Drink," she said gently. I obeyed, the cool liquid steadying the heat burning in my throat. "You handled yourself," she added. "Better than most." I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in me since childhood. It didn't feel like it. It felt like bleeding. Linda gave a small, understanding smile. "That's what truth does. It cuts on its way out." I nodded, staring down at the table. "It's not over." "No," she agreed, but the power dynamic just shifted. And they felt it. She wasn't wrong. I had seen it on their faces: shock, fear, confusion. The first cracks in the empire they'd built on my back. But I also knew who my family was. They wouldn't go down quietly. Linda checked her watch. "They'll strike again, probably within hours. Prepare for aggression, manipulation, and at least one attempt to rewrite the narrative." Rewriting the narrative was what the Holts did best. I stood gathering my mother's binder as though it were a shield. Let them try. Outside, the winter air hit my face in a sharp gust, but instead of shrinking under it, I inhaled deeply. The cold hurt, but the hurt felt clean, honest, pure in a way that my family had never been. I walked through town toward the small cafe near the courthouse, a place my mother had loved. She used to say the coffee tasted burnt, but the atmosphere tasted real. The staff knew her by name. They still smiled at me whenever I came in, offering quiet condolences they weren't even aware I needed. Inside, I ordered chamomile tea and found a corner booth by the window. A few people chatted around me, but the world felt muted, distant, almost peaceful. My tea arrived. I wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep in. Then my phone lit up. 18 missed calls. 11 from my father, 5 from Madison, 2 from my mother. I stared at the screen as the call counter jumped again. 19. I set the phone face down. The tea trembled slightly in my hands. The bell above the cafe door chimed, and for a split second panic flashed through me, ridiculous, irrational, but real. I half expected to see my father standing there, storming toward me with the self-righteous fury of a man who believed the world owed him an apology. Instead, it was a young couple laughing as they stepped inside. "Relax," I whispered to myself. "They can't touch you anymore." But even as I said it, a part of me knew it wasn't entirely true. Emotional entanglement doesn't end just because the legal ties break. Psychological bonds, especially toxic ones, linger like smoke after a fire. At 3:45 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text. From my mother. "One day you'll realize all we ever wanted was what was best for you." I stared at the message, feeling something cold settle in my chest. My mother had always been the softest weapon in the Holt arsenal. Her voice carried the guilt. Her eyes carried the disappointment. Her silence carried the threat. But that message, wrapped in false tenderness, felt like a dagger. I typed back slowly, deliberately. "I know the difference now between what's best for me and what's best for you." I hit send. She didn't reply. I finished my tea, left a tip, and walked back out into the cold. Snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting down in slow spirals, settling lightly on my coat. The world felt muted, almost cinematic. A strange calmness spread over me as I started walking toward the bus stop. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail, from an unknown number. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the air. "You think this is over? You think you can humiliate us and walk away? You are destroying this family, Meredith. I raised you, I fed you, I sacrificed everything for you. And this is how you repay me. You will regret this. I promise you, you will regret this." The message ended with a sharp exhale, a sound I had heard thousands of times growing up. The sound he made right before he broke something. Or someone. My breath fogged in the cold. For a moment, fear clawed at me, the old familiar fear that had shaped my entire childhood. The fear of stepping wrong, speaking wrong, breathing wrong. Then I took another breath. This one steadier. He couldn't break me anymore. I boarded the bus and rode back to the cabin. The sky was darker now, the sun melting behind thick clouds. The forest surrounding the cabin felt quiet, protective, almost maternal. I stepped inside, locked the door, and removed my coat. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket. But the peace was short-lived. At 6:09 p.m., headlights flashed through the frosted windows. I froze. A car door slammed, then another. Loud voices rose shouting, muffled but unmistakable. I stepped to the window and peered out. My parents' SUV was parked crookedly outside the cabin. My father stood in the snow red-faced and shouting at the front door even though he hadn't knocked yet. Madison was pacing beside him, arms flailing, her breath rising in frantic bursts. Panic shot through me. They had come, not for conversation, not for clarity, but for control. They marched toward the cabin as if they owned it. I grabbed my phone. Linda answered on the first ring. "Tell me they didn't." "They're here," I whispered, backing away from the window. "They're outside." "Do not open the door," she said sharply. "Do not engage. I'm calling the sheriff right now." My father's fist slammed against the front door. "Meredith," he roared, "open this door right now." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Madison shrieked, "You can't hide forever." Another fist slammed the door. I pressed myself against the wall, gripping the phone with shaking hands. Linda's voice came through the speaker, steady and firm. "Help is on the way. Just stay away from the windows." Another blow shook the cabin. The picture frames rattled. My father's voice was hoarse now. "You think some lawyer can protect you? You think you can take what's ours and run?" I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until my knuckles whitened. "It was never yours," I whispered to myself. Blue and red lights flashed against the trees, then not long after, but long enough that the minutes had stretched painfully. The sheriff's cars rolled up their tires, crunching through the snow. Officers approached cautiously, hands near their belts, but not touching their weapons. "Sir, step back," one officer ordered. My father shouted something about family matters. Madison shrieked about injustice. My mother cried dramatically, claiming I had been brainwashed. It took 5 minutes, 5 long, chaotic minutes, but eventually the officers guided them back toward the SUV. Before he got in, my father turned toward the cabin, staring through the window as if he could see me hiding behind the wall. His voice was low, icy, venomous. "This isn't over, Meredith." Then the door slammed shut and the SUV pulled away in a spray of snow. The flashing lights faded. Silence returned. Linda stayed on the phone until my breathing evened out. "You did the right thing," she said. "And next time, there won't be a next time. We'll file a protective order in the morning." I slumped onto the couch, shaking with a mixture of fear and relief. My family had shown their true selves, not just liars, not just manipulators, but desperate people losing control. It wasn't bravery that made them dangerous. It was desperation. I stared into the fire, my pulse slowly calming. Then I whispered to the empty cabin, "They don't get to come here anymore. They don't get to take anything else from me. Today the empire cracked. Tomorrow it would crumble, and I would not be there to catch it." I woke the next morning to a stillness so complete it felt unnatural. No pounding on the door, no frantic buzzing of my phone, no echoes of my father's voice booming through the cold night. Just quiet. A soft pale light seeped through the curtains, and for a moment I allowed myself to imagine a world where yesterday hadn't happened. But reality returned as soon as I reached for my phone. 14 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 6 text messages, all variations of the same please accusations and threats. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I got dressed, tied my hair back, and prepared for what Linda had told me would be the most important legal meeting of my life. Today was the formal confrontation, not the emotional chaos of family members banging on the door or screaming in the snow. Today was structure, evidence, law. Today was the day my family would either accept the consequences or destroy themselves trying to avoid them. I arrived at Linda's office 10 minutes early, and she was already standing at the conference table arranging documents, her expression sharp with focus. "You look steady," she observed. "I don't feel steady." "That's fine. You look it. Appearance is half the battle." I took my seat. "Are they really bringing a lawyer?" "They hired one last night." "I assume he hasn't slept much." I exhaled slowly. "What happens today?" "Today," Linda said, placing the final folder neatly in front of her, "your family will learn the difference between entitlement and ownership." At exactly 10:28, the outer door opened. Muffled voices drifted in. Heavy footsteps followed. The door to the conference room swung open. My family filed in. My father entered first, shoulders squared, suit jacket strained across his chest. His face was tight, stiff, vibrating with a quiet rage he clearly believed he was hiding. My mother looked drained, almost fragile, clinging to the arm of the tall, stern-faced attorney beside her. Her eyes darted to me, accusing, wounded, pleading all at once. Madison followed last. But something was different about her today. Her confidence had cracked. The sharpness in her gaze had been replaced with something jittery and nervous. She had lost sleep, she had cried, and she knew I would recognize both facts. Their attorney, a man named Reynolds, greeted Linda with forced politeness. Then he turned to me. "Ms. Holt," he said, nodding. "I understand there are disagreements within the family. We hope to resolve them civilly." "Resolution," Linda replied evenly, "begins with acknowledgement and honesty." He smiled tightly. "Of course." The seating arrangement was deliberate. I sat at the center of one side of the table, flanked by Linda, and an empty chair meant to symbolize neutrality. My family sat across from us, clustered tightly, as if afraid that distance might weaken the illusion of unity. Linda began by distributing copies of every document my mother had safeguarded. "Before we begin," she said, "I must note that all evidence provided was secured, legally authenticated, and reviewed by the probate court. Nothing presented today is speculative." My father scoffed. "Everything about this is speculative." Linda ignored him entirely. She pressed a button and a projector on the opposite wall lit up. The first image appeared, a bank statement, $30,000 withdrawn under my name. My father stiffened. Reynolds shifted in his seat. Linda clicked to the next slide, a forged signature, my signature, then another, and another. Every document was a wound reopening. I watched my father's face crumble inch by inch, not with guilt, but with fear of consequence. Madison stared down at the table, cheeks flaming, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My mother clutched a tissue as though bracing for impact. Linda clicked again. Audio filled the room. My mother's voice, weak but steady. "You can't keep doing this. Meredith doesn't know about the loans." Then my father's voice, low and menacing. "She doesn't need to know." Then Madison. "She'll sign whatever we tell her to sign. She always does. She thinks family means obedience." My stomach twisted, even though I had heard the recording before. My father's attorney cleared his throat loudly. "These recordings, Your Honor." "Well, excuse me, Ms. Graves. These recordings, although concerning, do not necessarily demonstrate intent to defraud." Linda turned to him sharply. "Please don't embarrass yourself, Mr. Reynolds. This isn't a courtroom, and you heard exactly what we all heard." Silence. Linda clicked again. Emails, transaction logs, transfers, property tax receipts charged to my account despite being attached to homes I'd never lived in. Then came the final image. A scanned letter. Handwritten. Signed by my mother. The dates aligned exactly with the period when she began quietly documenting everything. Reynolds scanned it, frowned, read it again, and finally set it down. This complicates matters. My father exploded. This is absurd. That woman, my wife, was not in her right mind when she wrote that she was medicated, she was ill. She was. Linda lifted a second binder. Here are her medical evaluations, dated, signed by doctors confirming full cognitive clarity for the entire year she prepared these documents. My father's jaw snapped shut. My mother's trembling worsened. Madison exhaled shakily. Reynolds held up both hands. Let's pause a moment and reassess. The tension in the room stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Linda folded her hands neatly. The point of today is simple. Your family leveraged Meredith's name financially and legally for years. They committed fraud. They attempted identity manipulation. They attempted inheritance interference. In any state, these actions are prosecutable. My mother gasped. Madison whispered, "Oh my God." My father glared at me. "You think you're going to send your own family to prison?" I didn't look away. I think I said quietly that my family put themselves there. He slammed a fist onto the table. Everyone jumped, even the attorney. Linda remained still as stone. My father leaned forward, eyes full of venom. "We raised you. We gave you everything. You wouldn't survive without us." There it was. The line that had shaped my entire life. The line that had kept me obedient, small afraid. I felt something inside me settle, a final piece falling into place. "No," I said. "You didn't give me everything. You took everything, and you convinced me it was love," Madison whispered. "Mere, please." I turned to her. Her eyes glistened. Her lips trembled. She looked small, young, lost. "This isn't me," she whispered. Dad pressured me. Mom didn't stop him. I held up a hand. "We'll talk later," I said, privately. A flash of hope crossed her face. My father noticed. His expression curdled. "Madison," he snapped, "don't you dare." Reynolds finally intervened. "Mr. Holt, please." The attorney turned to Linda, visibly sweating now. "What exactly does your client want? What is the goal here? Dismantling the entire family." Linda looked at me. I nodded. She slid a set of documents across the table. "These," she said, "are relinquishment agreements. Property, financial claims, estate rights. In exchange for signing, Meredith agrees not to pursue criminal charges." My father laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "You think we're signing those?" Linda didn't blink. "If you don't, we will file everything. Today." Madison swallowed audibly. My mother whispered, "Please, David. Stop. Just stop." My father turned to her in disbelief. "You're taking her side." My mother broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She kept everything because she knew, she whispered. "She knew you would drain her dry like you drained me, like you drained this family. She knew." My father stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. His face darkened. "Sign it," my mother whispered to him, "before we lose everything." But he didn't look at her. He looked at me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see a father staring back. I saw a man cornered. A man who had built an identity on dominance. A man who was terrified of a daughter who no longer bowed her head. "This isn't over," he hissed. Then he pushed back his chair, grabbed Reynolds by the arm, and stormed out. My mother followed, crying softly. Madison lingered. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the loans were in your name. I didn't know everything Dad was doing. I went along with it. I went along with everything." I watched her struggle to breathe. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. I exhaled slowly. "Then don't." She collapsed into the chair, sobbing. "I'll sign," she said. "Whatever you want. I'll sign." Something inside me softened, not much, just enough to acknowledge a fragile truth: Madison wasn't innocent. But she wasn't lost forever. Linda handed her a pen. My sister signed every page with trembling hands. When she was done, she pressed her forehead to the table and wept. I stood. "I need air," I murmured. Linda nodded. "Take your time." Outside, the winter sun had risen high, reflecting off the snow in a cold, sharp brilliance. I stepped into the brightness, closing my eyes as the wind lifted strands of my hair. It wasn't victory, not yet. But it was the moment before victory. The moment when the scales finally shift. The moment when surviving becomes reclaiming. I inhaled deeply. Today, part of the empire fell. Tomorrow, the rest would crumble. Snow was melting on the cabin roof the morning I officially became free. Not metaphorically, though, that was true too, but legally, irreversibly, indisputably free. Documents had been filed, signatures notarized, protective orders approved. My name, my identity finally belonged to me again, no longer stretched thin under the weight of my family's greed. The quiet outside felt different now. It wasn't the tense stillness I'd known most of my life, the kind that warned me to tread lightly or risk being swallowed whole. It was gentle, open, like a doorway I had never been allowed to walk through until now. I stood by the window with a cup of tea warming my palms and watched the last stubborn patches of snow shrink under the pale March sunlight. The storm was over, and I had survived it. When I stepped outside, a cold breeze kissed my cheeks, but it didn't sting. The forest seemed to breathe with me. Birds darted between the branches, calling to one another as if welcoming spring. For once, I didn't feel out of place in the world. I felt present, solid, unafraid. My phone vibrated lightly in my pocket. A text from Linda. Filed, processed, final. "Congratulations, Meredith." I smiled slow and full, the kind of smile that felt like it came from muscles I hadn't used in years. I typed back, "Thank you for everything." Then I slid the phone away. There was nothing left to check. No crisis waiting, no fire to put out, no obligation disguised as love demanding my immediate attention. Just quiet, just me, just freedom. Later that morning, I drove into town and parked by the waterfront. The lake was half frozen, half shimmering, the wind brushing faint ripples across the thawed sections. My mother used to bring my sister and me here when we were little. She'd tell us to throw a pebble and make a wish, then swear up and down that the lake kept secrets. I picked up a small stone from the shoreline, cold and smooth, and held it for a moment. "I hope you see this," I whispered to her memory. "I hope you know we made it." I tossed the stone. It skipped once, twice, then sank into the quiet depths. The wind shifted slightly as if answering. The next part of my day was unfamiliar territory. Not court documents, not crisis management, not hiding in fear of angry fists pounding on my door. I had an appointment at a college campus with an academic advisor. When I walked into the office, the bright-eyed woman behind the desk beamed at me. "You must be Meredith. Come in. I reviewed your application last night. Your essay was remarkable." I blinked. It was yes. "You wrote about rebuilding your life from the ground up, about resilience, about finding your voice after years of being silenced." We were moved, truly. My cheeks warmed. "I didn't think it was impressive." She shook her head. "It wasn't just impressive, it was brave. You'd be a fantastic candidate for our psychology program." Psychology. The word felt like sunlight. Helping others reclaim their lives after losing themselves. Helping people break cycles that once felt unbreakable. Helping women like me. I swallowed, suddenly emotional. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Her smile softened. "I think good things are coming for you, Meredith. You're choosing yourself now. Choosing myself. Not surviving, not shrinking, not appeasing. Choosing." By the time I left the campus, a small acceptance packet in my hands, the sky had brightened into a soft blue streaked with gold. Everything around me seemed sharpened, cleaner, stronger, more possible than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. I drove home the long way past the bakery, where my mother used to buy cinnamon rolls, past the church, where she sang in the choir, past the park where Madison and I used to feed ducks every Saturday morning, before competition and comparison took her from me. The memories didn't hurt anymore. They simply existed. When I pulled into the cabin driveway, a familiar car was waiting. Madison's. She stood by the porch, hugging her coat around herself, eyes red from crying. Her posture was hesitant, not demanding, not entitled, not the girl who once believed the world belonged to her. I stepped out of the car. She stepped toward me. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey." Silence stretched between us, not tense, just fragile. "I wanted to see you," she said softly. "Not for Dad, not for Mom, for me." I nodded, cautious but open. "Okay," she swallowed hard. "I signed everything. You know that." "Yes. And I know I have no right to ask you anything. But I need to say this." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry. Truly, deeply, and I'm trying to do better. I'm in therapy. I'm learning how much of what I said came from fear. And how much came from Dad's voice instead of my own." I studied her face. She wasn't acting. She wasn't manipulating. She was trying. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," I said quietly. Her eyes filled again. "I want you in my life, even if it's small, even if it's slow, even if I have to earn every inch of ground." I hesitated, then nodded once. "Small steps," I said. A trembling smile broke across her face. Small steps. We didn't hug, not yet. But the air between us shifted, no longer a wall but a doorway. She left soon after wiping her cheeks, thanking me for listening. I watched her car disappear down the winding road, feeling something I hadn't expected: closure. Not revenge, not victory. Closure. That afternoon I returned to the cabin and opened the woodworking box my mother left me. Inside were her old tools, a small hammer measuring tape, a chisel worn from years of use. The scent of cedar rose as I lifted the lid. I traced my fingers over the handle of the hammer. "I'm learning," I whispered to her. "I'm finally learning." I spent the next hour building something simple, a wooden frame for the acceptance letter I had tucked inside my bag. My hands were clumsy at first, but the rhythm came quickly, easily, as though my mother's hands guided mine. By evening, the frame rested on the table beside a small candle. I stepped outside and watched the sun sink behind the tree line, flooding the sky with gold and orange. A soft knock sounded behind me. I turned. Cameron stood on the porch holding a paper bag with a shy smile. "I made too much dinner," he said. "Thought you might want some," I laughed. "You made dinner?" "Okay," he admitted. I heated dinner. But generosity doesn't require culinary skill. He joined me on the porch, handing me a warm container. We sat side by side, not touching, not rushing anything, just breathing the same quiet air. He glanced at me after a long silence. "You seem lighter." "I am," I said truthfully. "Good," he murmured. "You deserve that." We ate in companionable quiet until the stars appeared overhead. When he finally rose to leave, he paused, studying me gently. "I'm proud of you, Meredith, for everything you walked through. And everything you didn't let break you." When he was gone, I stayed outside, staring at the sky. For the first time in my life, I felt fully, wholly mine. My name, my future, my peace. All of it belonged to me. I stepped inside, closed the door, and whispered into the warm cabin air. They said I wouldn't last a week without them. Turns out I was never meant to belong to them in the first place. And as the fire crackled softly, and the lake shimmered in the distance, I understood something simple, but life-changing. Walking away hadn't destroyed me. It had saved me. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who tried to convince you that you were nothing without them, tell me in the comments. Share your story. Your voice might be the one that gives someone else the courage to finally stand up and reclaim their life. And if this journey meant something to you, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are more stories ahead, and I'd be honored to share them with you.